It's okay. I thought the floor show was starting.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could stand for the pledge.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic justice for all.
Welcome everyone to the February Committee of the Whole meeting for the Community High School District 94 Board of Education. Mission statement, please.
Community High School strives to promote and provide growth experiences in learning, leadership, and living.
Thank you, Rich. Board agreements, please.
Okay, board agreements, social media, 4A. Board members recognize that while we may be giving our individual opinion or stating a fact on social media, it has the potential to impact the entire board. B, when promoting official district business and activities, personal use of social media should be limited to directly sharing links from the district media platforms without personal editorial or opinion. C, board members will not post rebuttals, responses, corrections to district-related social media posts.
Thank you, Lynn. Roll call, please.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Casey Mayer.
Here.
Ms. Doremus. Ms. Munoz.
Here.
Mr. Nagel.
Present.
Mr. Sake.
Present.
Mr. Zuniga.
Here.
All right, that brings us to public participation. This is the portion of our meeting where any member of the public can address the Board of Education on any topic. We welcome your comments and will carefully listen to your concerns. We will not be able to engage in a dialogue during public participation, but when appropriate, we will direct the administration to follow up. Presentations are limited to no more than 5 minutes per person, with a total time limit of 30 minutes for public participation. Personal charges or complaints against individual employees, volunteers, or students of the district should not be initiated during public comment. At this point, I have not received any cards for public participation. Were you going to participate or not? All right. I have one electronic public participation from Cheryl Moore. The topic, use of ESSER COVID money. On your agenda tonight is a report regarding the superintendent evaluation. I would encourage the board to include the superintendent's use of ESSER grant money in that discussion. According to the ISB website, ESSER grants have provided federal pandemic relief funding to enable schools to operate safely during the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic and support social, emotional, and academic recovery. The administration, under the superintendent's direction, requested ISBE to provide the district $525,000 of ESSER/COVID money. This money was spent to resurface the football field in the summer of 2021. In the grant submission, the administration stated why they believe the request qualifies for use of ESSER/COVID money. This is verbatim what they submitted. Quote, use for PE classes to ensure social distancing per COVID protocol for all students required per state guidelines to participate in PE, end quote. So the administration said the PE classes were not able to use the turf field and therefore it needed $525,000 to resurface. Please be advised of a few facts relevant to this assertion that will bring into question the truth of this assertion. Number one, the boys soccer team played a game on the turf as late as April 14th, 2021, as evidenced by the athletic website. Two, the district submitted the request to ISBE to use $525,000 of ESSER/COVID money for resurfacing the turf on April 10th, 2021, 4 days before that soccer game. Three, the PE classes were using the turf at the end of the 2021 school year, just days before construction started. Four, the district did not report to the community the spending of this money as required by the ESSER grant rules. The community has the right to know that federal grant money meant to support social, emotional, and academic recovery was diverted to athletics by the superintendent. If the turf needed to be resurfaced, the board should have used money from its own operating funds. As we learned at the last board meeting, there is an incredibly large fund balance available that no one was told about. In December, 3 months ago, the board authorized a 7% tax levy on a community hit very hard by COVID and inflation. There was more than $525,000 available for the turf, so why was ESSER/COVID money used? This is a quote from grants.gov. Grant fraud typically occurs when award recipients attempt to deceive the government about their spending of award money. Such behavior amounts to lying, cheating, and stealing, according to the Department of Justice. It will be up to the board or ISBE to determine if there was any misconduct in this matter, but at a minimum, the board cannot disagree that the decision to use ESSER/COVID money on the turf was not transparent and does not align with the district's mission of living, leading, and learning. All right, and that is it for public participation. That brings us to reports and information, IASA, IASB, and IASBO conference follow-up. So this is an opportunity for those of us who attended the conference, if we wanted to talk about any of the sessions we attended or things that, ideas that we had that was brought up or information coming out of that. Just to start off, couple takeaways from sessions that I attended this year that I think we might want to take a look at taking some action on going forward. The first topic, Rich had brought up this issue several meetings ago, and with that, and in light of a session that I had attended from a district that has this practice in place, I would like the board to consider restarting the practice of having a student as a representative but non-voting member of the school board. This would be useful not only to receive a report from them on the current state of the student body, but their thoughts and comments would be very helpful to the board as a student perspective as we discuss and decide on issues that directly connect with our students. At a future board meeting, I'd like to have a board discussion on this topic, and if there is consensus on moving forward, we can formulate a policy on how that would work. And the second topic I wanted to bring up, I believe that the board should consider starting a formal strategic planning process this year. It has been a long time since a district has gone through that practice, and reviewing and potentially revising the core beliefs, mission, vision, and goals would not only be valuable for the district, it can also be a tool to bring better unity and collaboration between the school board members and the superintendent. So those were a couple highlights that came out of my experience. So throw it open to any other board members for comments on your conference experiences this year.
Jump in. As your delegate representative, I attended the delegate assembly Saturday morning. It went much better than it did last year. Started pretty much on time with operational remote voter dongles. Last year it was 45 minutes late starting because they couldn't get things working. They did have a little problem getting an accurate delegate count, which is critical for determining voter percentages. By the time everything was done, they had about 405 attendees. 3 of 5 resolutions were pulled off the consent agenda. The school construction topics and school safety grants remained on the consent agenda. The Miller ratio adjustment passed 317 to 86. Periodic reviews of mandates passed 258 to 132. An issue of discussion was that mandates should be subject to sunset, but the sunset was not defined. There were suggestions by the people against approval that it be sent back for amendment to clarify. After listening to both sides, I voted against approval and hoping that it would go back to clarification. It did not. Financial contributions for school board elections passed 307 to 61. Issues that candidates need support but should not be beholden to PACs. Questions about how this would be regulated were asked. Suggestions that this also be sent back for amendment. After listening to the comments, I also voted no on that. There were no additional challenges to any of the do not present resolutions. My second Saturday session, measuring impact and academic ROI. There's a company out there called ECRA that does predictive analytics. They call kids bubble kids, just below the medium. The idea is that you focus and track on those kids, raise them up to be above the medium, and then work on another group. So instead of trying to get the kids at the bottom raised up, you get kids near the middle, raise them up a little, and keep moving them up. Reminded me a little bit of the Bridge and Avid programs we have here. One of the thoughts I had was to look at our top 3 successful programs and continue promoting those. Presenters of this were from 3 districts that use ECRA, Mannheim 83, Lamont Bromberwick 113A, and Monmouth Roseville 213. Third session I went to was called Relationships, Pathways, Internships Equal Student Success, presented by Lake Zurich 91. It was an excellent presentation. They're a unit district. They have a program to connect students locally with businesses for internships, job shadowing, etc. District staff reach out to business and work with businesses to help meet vocational needs. It's a unit district. A lot of this work comes out of the district office. There's a thing called Pro Network out of NIU that helps with efforts like this and do team-based challenges. Their foundation supports internships with grants. One of the comments was, kids don't always know what they want to do. A successful internship does not always result in a positive experience, but may save someone going to school for a time to find they are not interested in that as a career. Other comments from students were they wish they had been taught how to network, maybe something to be rolled into our den time. There's the Pathway Endorsement Program and certificates for instructors. They network for internships through the Tech Center. Lake Zurich has 1,800 students at their high school, and they also do some internship discussions in the middle school. Last Saturday session, there's Power in Numbers, Helping Peers with Mental Health, presented by Clinton USD 15. Basically, youth mental health first aid for students, similar to first aid CPR training. Comments out of that was mental health is a top priority. Without that, nothing else matters. So again, something maybe to look at into our den time. At the exhibition hall, I found something I've been asking for years, a company called Pringle Robotics. They make an automated floor cleaner that runs up and down the hall. It programs, it follows. You don't need to do anything with it. I showed Bob. I think
It was
he
very
got
cool.
some
It was very cool.
pictures. So I've been asking about that for years and years. Since hallways are long and straight, you just send it down and clean it up. So I think I've got some information. Bob's got some information. I'd ask the administration to look into that. One other thing that struck me, a lot of discussion at the conference about diversity, and every meeting I read our mission statement, and we really don't have anything in there about diversity, although we do have a fairly large diversity population. So I'm thinking somewhere along the line, maybe we want to go and revisit our mission statement.
Great. Want to jump in?
I'll go next. So I took a session on board policy, biases, and how we govern. Some of the takeaways from that was the board's role in equity and empowerment, and transparency, and the idea of what closed doors can do for the community, for students, and families. I took another session on school violence, and just overall the theme of that is kids that struggle feel like they don't belong. So connection is obviously super important, and that drives data. A session on student behavior, building resilience within our teaching programs, programming that meets the needs of students and accounts for trauma, and the idea of partnering with parents and what that can do, and then parent education.
Anybody else? All right then. Thank you for those summaries. It's some very interesting things to think about. That brings us to facility naming. Lynn, Penny, and Kathy have graciously agreed to be on a committee to focus on the facility naming and memorials topic. The goal of the committee will be to draft proposed language for a policy on facility naming and memorials that will then be brought to the full board. The policy should include what types of facility naming and memorials we can consider, as well as some type of criteria around the circumstances of when our board or future boards should consider granting a naming and/or memorial so that it can be done fairly and appropriately. Once a policy has been approved by the full board, then it can be applied to the decision of how to potentially honor the memory of Dan Johnson. The committee will need to abide by open meeting standards, including agenda posting, etc. And any comments on that?
I'd like to make a comment on that. When we had this discussion about naming facility, it was brought up how important it was to the community. In thinking about that, I'm thinking that rather a board group, that maybe it needs to be a little bit bigger and involve the community. And my recommendation would be, and not to discourage anybody from being part of it, but not to exceed 2 board members, community members, staff members, administration, to discuss this. It's a bigger picture to look at how we would do that, what's important, and then bring that back to the board, and the board would tailor a policy that would fit that. Seemed to me that, the more people you were involving, because it does become a bigger issue, that, it should be more voices heard.
What's the board's thinking on that? Do we want to proceed with a 3-member board committee, or do we want to figure out how to have a much larger committee to figure out a policy? Because we're talking about crafting a policy.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but I think you want to craft a policy that meets the interest of the community as a whole.
Well, I think the community as a whole has spoken that there's a lot of people in the community that would like us to be able to provide this honor. It's just a question of how and when do we do it.
Well, I think a lot of that was directed specifically at naming the pool after Mr. Johnson, but I think if you're going to do that, you need to open that up to other possibilities as well.
Well, yeah, this should be a broad policy about what kinds of naming and memorials we would want to consider.
I was just going to say, I'm happy to have input from the community and the teachers. Yeah.
I concur. I think you need a wider set of opinions than just board members on this.
All right, then perhaps the committee of 3 that we already have can bring some community members and such into that fold.
So, yeah, so we'll start with the 3 and then
Yes.
add to that.
That sounds good. Whoever you'd want as far as community members, faculty, staff, administration, whatever the
Students,
committee feels is appropriate.
Because they'll be, part of making recommendations and things, having, lived with the people that they'd be nominating and stuff like that. So,
What did you say just before that?
just including students.
Yes, students as well, so yeah.
Okay.
All right, so the committee, the 2 of the 3 that are here, you're comfortable with broadening that out, and it's, as a committee, it's your discretion to figure out when and how you want to meet. Just make sure that it's following open meetings, and you have to have minutes and such.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely, taken care of.
anything else regarding this topic? All right, then. That moves us to superintendent evaluation. I have emailed each of you a copy of the current superintendent evaluation document, as well as Moses' update of his goals that he went over with us last month. Please give thought to how you would fill out the evaluation document, and in executive session at the February 21st board meeting, we will discuss them as a board and come to a consensus so that our board can speak with one voice. So are there any questions or comments regarding the process at this point?
So, if I understand, then on the next meeting, we're going to be actually filling out the form?
Right, bring your thoughts, your own personal thoughts, and then we'll do like we did the last time, and we'll go as a group, section by section, and try to come to consensus on what we as a board wish to say in each area.
There was, at the beginning of that, it said something about goals relative to COVID recovery or something like that, which seemed a little bit odd. I don't know that we want to focus on.
Was that still listed in the heading for that?
That was still in there.
All right, we'll tweak that then. Because obviously that's not really the issue that it was in
None of the
previous.
goals really were, in line with that.
Well, the goals that are there are the defined superintendent goals that have been in place for a while.
Right, but not specific to COVID recovery.
Correct. Anything else on superintendent evaluation? All right, that brings us to 2023 summer construction.
Thank you. I wanted to provide the board with an update on 2 items regarding summer construction. They are first the bid opening results for work for our construction over the summer for bathrooms, lighting, and doors. And secondly, an update to the air handler installation with integral construction. On February 1st, we had a bid opening for the 2023 summer construction work. The base bid included the main washrooms in the main hallway of the original 1926 section. There was an alternate for ceiling and lighting replacements by entrance A and the adjacent corridors, and then another alternate bid for door replacements. We had 6 bidders for the project. DLA had an estimated cost for all 3 areas at $300,000 to $500,000. The low bid for all areas came in higher than expected and was $643,000 and was submitted by Paul Borg Construction. We've started to review references for Paul Borg and confirm the pricing, which at this point all appear to be reasonable. Although pricing is more than expected, considering the crossing of fiscal years for the budget purposes and the expectation of additional CPPRT funding this year, we will be recommending moving forward with this project at the February board meeting. The second item, an update with Integral Construction. As you know, is scheduled to complete the air handler installation this summer. Integral's main subcontractor for the project recently closed their business, so Integral will have to find another subcontractor. We're working to secure some of the equipment the subcontractor had in their possession, which at this point appears that we'll be able to. Integral is confident that the project this summer will stay on schedule and will be completed timely. Any questions on summer construction?
Okay, that brings us to 2023-2024 Quest contract renewal.
Yeah. Attached to the agenda is a 1-year contract renewal with Quest. As a reminder, we'll be moving to an application-based program starting with the next school year. The contract terms are basically the same as the last year of the original contract, with the minimum payment to the school of $42,000 or 4% of sales with a $2,500 option for new equipment. We'll be asking the board to approve that contract at the February board meeting. Questions?
All right, and finally, 2023 to 2024 health insurance renewal rates.
We have received our preliminary health insurance rates from our insurance cooperative, EBC. Renewal rates are again higher than normal this year, which still stems from increased utilization after the lockdown, but also from an added inflation this year. The preliminary rate increases for our PPO program is 11.4%, which is 1 step above the average increase for the whole cooperative, which was 10.4%. The preliminary rate increase for our HMO program is 6.2%, which is 1 step lower than the average increase for the whole cooperative, which was 7.2%. We met with the insurance committee this afternoon to discuss these preliminary rates. The committee agreed that once again the rates are higher than normal due to rare circumstances, and as such, changes to plans were not recommended. Rates should be finalized in the coming weeks, but changes to rates should not be expected. EBC did note that they are starting to see normal utilization across the co-op, so they are hopeful that rates go back to normal next year.
Any questions or comments regarding that?
Refresh my memory. Who's on the insurance committee?
I can pull the names
by
for you.
people, not necessarily people, but
Sure. There are 4 certified staff members, 2 support staff members, Dan and myself. And we also have our Gallagher reps present at those meetings.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?